Everyone be seated, please. Oscar Franklin Culpepper, 89, of Valdosta, passed away on Monday, October 9th, 2023, following a lengthy illness. He was born on February 18th, 1934, in Abbeville, Alabama, to the late Oscar Culpepper and Ethel Parker Culpepper. He was a faithful member of Central Avenue Church of Christ and was an athlete his whole life. In 1956, he lost his right hand in an accident at the paper mill. Stan Wozniak from the Detroit Tigers visited him in the hospital with a professional baseball contract. In 1968, he moved his family to New Zealand. That's where he took up golf. He went on to be the international one-arm golf champion for many years and won well over 100 tournaments. As much as he loved golf, he loved his two grandchildren even more. Mr. Culpepper is survived by his wife of 67 years, Kathleen P. Culpepper, daughter Kathy C. Folsom of Valdosta, daughter and son-in-law Dawn C. and Ben McClendon of Valdosta, grandson Logan S. McClendon of Valdosta, granddaughter Kelsey K. McClendon of Valdosta, sister Dorothy C. Parker of Hayhira, brother and sister-in-law James and Sylvia Parker of Hayhira, and an abundance of nephews and nieces and good friends. He was preceded in death by his parents, sister Rose Culpepper, his brother and sister-in-law Henry and B.B. Culpepper, brother and sister-in-law Reuben and Jeanette Culpepper, sister and brother-in-law Francis and Stephen Stevens, and sister and brother-in-law Lucy and Carl Brownell, and sister and brother-in-law Betty and J.L. Taint. And of course today is the funeral service. I want to say a few words about my uncle, Oscar Franklin Culpepper. He was known by his name at home as Son. His father never called him anything but Son, and that's all he knew. But on the athlete scene, I can tell you Frank was a natural athlete. He was a football player. He was a quarterback in high school. And I'll never forget him talking about a defensive linebacker. Back in those days, they had no face guards. And there was a defensive linebacker that loved to chew in the backer. And naturally, every time he would cross the line, he would spit the backer in Frank's eyes. Frank got tired of that. And he told two of his linemen to take him out or else. And that's what they did. He was a basketball player and refereed basketball many years here in the Lowndes County area. He was a fast-pitch softball player, and he was a good one because I went to many and many a game. Sports is what brought Kathleen and Frank together. They both had sports background. Kat was an avid basketball player. And everybody she played knew if she got her hands on the basketball, she was going to the goal. and they knew they better get out of the way. But Frank, he loved baseball. That was probably his best sport because, as I've already read, he had a contract to play after he lost his hand. Cat and Frank was married, and it was only 4 weeks later that he lost his hand in an accident at Owens, Illinois, at Clarkville, in a paper machine. And that took a long time for him to heal from that. I'll never forget what he went through with his nerve problems in that hand was just unreal. But it wasn't too awful many years after that. There was a special event that happened in their family. Kathy was born. And Frank was so proud, he went and bought 6 boxes of cigars to give away. And then came Donnie. And Donnie, I'm sorry, but there was no cigars for you. I think Frank was really wanting a boy real bad, so he gave up on the cigars. They moved to New Zealand. He took his family to New Zealand, as I have already read. They did a marvelous work in New Zealand. Kat was a #1 chef. She knew how to prepare food, and food always brings people together. And they had a lot of friends over there. One of Frank's many talents was a printer. He knew how to operate a printing press. So in New Zealand, he was the #1 printer for all the brochures and handouts that they had. They purchased a 3-story, what was a dentist office at that time, and converted that thing into a church. And it was a beautiful building. I don't know if all of you have seen that building, but I saw it before and after Frank put his touches on it. And how he got up to the dome on that 3-story building with one hand, I will never understand. But he did. He was just that kind of person. He pulled himself up somehow. Frank retired from Owens, Illinois in the shipping department as a supervisor after some 20-odd years. And after that, this is when they came back from New Zealand, and he went into many different things, like he was a landscaper, he was a contractor, he was a roofer, he run paper out, he was a minute market manager. There wasn't much that Frank couldn't do, and he was good at it. And Frank loved people, and he always had a story to tell. He had many stories to tell. Frank and Kat were married, as I've already mentioned, 67 years, but they knew each other 70 years because they went to a lot of baseball games together. And Frank dearly loved her 2 brothers. I didn't think this was going to happen. Excuse me. But they became real close to each other. And Frank actually spent a lot of time in my grandmother's house sleeping with those boys. They all 3 slept in the same bed together. But they were really close to each other. They loved baseball, all 3 of them. Frank was an avid golfer. As I said, he learned the golf game in New Zealand. As time passed, he invented a device to go on that right hand. And that device really proved to be the answer to his golf game. And I don't know if he tried to get a patent on that at one time or not. I'm not sure, but had he have done that, there would have been a lot of one-arm golfers that would have really, really benefited from that. Frank won at least 2, if not more, international handicap tournaments, which was a big thing. And he had a number of hole-in-one golf balls that for golfers to know what a hole-in-one is, that means you stroke it one time and it goes in a cup. Unreal. Frank's greatest joy probably in life was his 2 grandchildren, Logan and KK. He loved these 2 beyond measure, and they brought much joy to Frank and Kat. Still bringing joy now to Kat. But they loved him, and they had a nickname. Just like Frank was son coming up, they nicknamed him Biggie, Red Bear, and Old Man. And he loved it. He ate it up. Now, Frank fought a courageous battle with cancer that finally took his life. He fought a good fight. And like I say, he was a kind and loving gentleman. He loved the Lord tremendously. He was a deacon in the church. He taught classes for many, many years here at this church. He was a Bible scholar. Frank had a good life, 89 plus 7.5 months, some odd, almost 90 years old. Not many people reached that. Of course, they were long livers in the Culpepper family. His mother and father both lived considerably long lives. I have a couple of short verses here that I'd like to read that I think is very fitting at this time. Let not your heart be troubled. We believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms, many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you. And I think that's what he does to those that he loves. He's going to take them into his bosom. In my close, and there's many, many comfortable verses in the Bible that describes what heaven can be like. But here's one thing. Revelation 21, verse 4. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Frank was in a lot of pain. He was in a lot of pain for 2 years, and I'm sure the family probably was not even aware of the pain that he really was in. But he fought it. He really fought it. He really wanted to come back from it. But the Lord had other plans for him. And I thank the family, and I thank everybody here that came in his honor. Some of you came from way off. CJ, it's a good thing to see you here. I hadn't seen you in years, brother. But anyway, I thank you for the time that I've had to just hit on some highlights. And we could talk all day about Frank, but I think some of the others need to say a few words too, if you will. Not you.
If you could go with me back to where I started from, then I know you would see a miracle of love that took me in its sweet embrace and made me what I am today. Just an old sinner saved by grace. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death, He took my place. Now I live and breathe in freedom. With each breath of life I take, loved and forgiven, back with the living. I'm just a sinner saved by How could I boast of anything I've ever seen or done? How could I dare to claim as mine the victories God has won? Where would I be had God not brought me gently to this place? I'm here to say I'm nothing but a sinner saved by grace. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death,
All right, my name is Zach Parker. Just to give a little context to who I am, Dorothy Parker, Little Mama, is my grandmother, and Uncle Frank was my great uncle. And they asked me to tell a few stories today, which is really easy because there's so many to tell. But I want to start off with Bo Jackson, Jack Nicklaus, Roger Staubach, Larry Bird, and Babe Ruth. What's the one thing that these men had in common? None of them were as good an athlete as Frank Culpepper. And as I say that as a joke, he was an unbelievable athlete. I'm obviously from a lot younger generation, but everybody I talked to, that's the first thing they said about Uncle Frank was how great of an athlete he was. And the person that would tell you the most about how great of an athlete was Uncle Frank. I know it's already been mentioned that he lost his arm when he was a young man, which I'm sure as an athlete is, very, very difficult to go through, but it didn't slow him down. He kept going, kept pushing to do the thing that he loved, and that's to play sports. And I know Little Mama has told me that he'd asked to go out in the yard and try to figure out how to throw a baseball and catch it with the same glove and toss it up and use the same hand to throw the ball. And he obviously figured it out because he became a great baseball player from all the stories that you hear. But I want to tell a few stories, obviously from my point of view, and things that happened with Uncle Frank that are just really seared into my memory. But one of the first times I had a situation with Uncle Frank, I was 10 or 11 years old, and my dad had dropped me off at Stone Creek to play golf. He dropped me off in the summertime, and I'd go walk holes or hit balls or do whatever. And I got on the sixth hole, I was by myself, and I was walking, and there was these 5 men, and they just wouldn't let me through their group. And if you know anything about golf, when you're by yourself and there's a bunch of people in front of you, usually they'll let you through. So they kept making me stay behind them. We got on the 14th hole, and I was super annoyed, and I was also young and immature and impatient. And I just decided I'm just going to hit a ball into them. So I get up there, I just hit a ball, and as I get up there, I see Uncle Frank, and I was like, uh-oh, I know that man. So I get up there, and he kind of got on to me, and I apologized, and he asked me why, and I said, because y'all wouldn't let me through. And he said, look here, I've been watching you all day. He said, you don't know how to play golf. He said, if you want to figure out how to play golf, he said, you come watch me. So we got on the next tee box, and he gets up there, and we already talked about the contraption he had. And he took that thing, he licked that golf club all the way up, and he stuck that contraption on the bottom. He slid it down tight on there. And he stepped up there and hit his tee shot straight down the middle. And he turned back and looked back. He said, you see that right there? That's how you hit a golf ball. And he got in his cart, and he took off, and I had to stay behind him the rest of the way, all the way. He still loved me. And as I got a little older, I was in college, and I was playing ball. And, he was always saying something about, if you want to learn how to run a route, you need to come talk to me. All these different things he would say. But I want to say that the one thing that sticks in my memory about Uncle Frank, if he ever told a story, anytime he started a story, he would start with one phrase, and some of y'all know it. And he'd say, look here, babe. Look here, babe. Every time. And that's what he always said to me. But one morning, I had made a catch, and I came in to church building right here, and he walked up to me, and it was a one-handed catch, and he looked at me, and he goes, hey, now, you make sure you tell everybody I taught you how to do that. That's the only way I know how to catch a football is with one hand. And you know I taught you how to do that. So that was a really funny story. And lastly, I want to talk about the last golf outing that I had with him. And it wasn't that long ago. It was just a few years ago. But he called me up and Dad and Aunt Karen and asked us to play in the golf tournament with him. And I always had fun with Uncle Frank, and I always messed around with him a little bit. And if y'all know him, he loved to tell stories. And he would add a little bit in there, I think, just a little bit extra, maybe just a little bit sometimes into the stories. And we got on the first tee at Stone Creek. He said, look here, babe, right here. I hit a ball here a few years ago, hit the cart path, bounced in the sand trap, popped out, went in the hole in one number 32. I said, all right, Uncle Frank. So we get on the next hole. He starts telling another story. So we get into the round. I said, I think I'm going to start telling some stories of my own. So I just started making up stuff. And it didn't take long. I'd finish my story, and he'd start on another one. And they just kept getting more fantastic. And I'm pretty sure he knew what I was doing. So finally, we got on number 11, and I said, I think I'm just going to say something absolutely insane just to see what he says. And so I said, hey, Uncle Frank, I hit a ball here on number 11 in the right in the woods, and we could never find it, so we just went on. I said, but we got on number 12, and lo and behold, it was in the hole. I said, a hole in one on 2 holes. I made a 1 on 2 holes. And I thought it would slow him down, but nope, he jumped right into another story and kept going. But I want to end with this about Uncle Frank, and what's really cool is I think that most of us want to live our lives in a way that we're remembered. Because once we're gone, all that's left is the memories of us, and that's good or bad. And the cool thing about Uncle Frank is he's going to be remembered. There's not a golf round that goes by that I know Dad, Karen, Uncle Stephen, and me, if we start to tell a story, or especially me, if I start to tell a story, I always start with, look here, babe, let me tell you something. And that's just from Uncle Frank, and that's going to continue. So I just want to say in closing right now, you know, we are looking at you, Uncle Frank. We're looking at you today, and we're going to remember you, and your legacy will definitely live on because you were just a great person to be around, and we just enjoyed you. So.
I was working in town one afternoon, attending some business affairs. I heard a commotion a couple streets over and wondered what's happening there. A young man was running from in that direction and stopped just to catch his breath. I asked him to please tell me what was the hurry. He smiled up at me and he said, I was trying to catch the crippled man. Did he run past this way? He was rushing home to tell everyone what Jesus did today. And the mute man was telling myself and the deaf girl he's leaving to answer God's call. It's hard to believe, but if you don't trust me, ask the blind man, he saw it all. Ask the blind man, he saw it all. My friend, if the troubles and burdens you carry are heavy and dragging you down, and you've tried everything you can possibly think of, but there's no relief to be found, that very same Jesus that altered the future of the blind man, the deaf and the lame, is still reaching out in your hour of trouble. One touch and you're never the same. You'll be trying to catch the crippled man. Did he run past this way? He was rushing home to tell everyone what Jesus did today. And the mute man was telling myself and the deaf girl he's leaving to answer God's call. It's hard to believe, but if you don't trust me, ask the blind man, he saw it all. Ask the blind man, he saw it all. He saw it all.
Look here, babe. No, Zach's right. That was you knew it was coming when he said that. One thing I want to say first is I owe Uncle Frank a lot from the get-go. I don't know how this worked out or how it happened, but my dad ended up in Columbus, Georgia, with Uncle Frank, working at the same job, and Daddy had plenty of stories about Uncle Frank, by the way, so he was there with him. And Daddy ended up renting a room from Oscar Culpepper, my granddaddy, and that's how he met Mama. So we owe him a lot for my beautiful family that's here. So thank you for that, Uncle Frank. But other, look at Babe was famous with Uncle Frank. At one point, we lived two houses down from Uncle Frank. And one afternoon late, I was out there trimming the hedges and trying to get them looking good. And all of a sudden, a golf ball lands about 6 feet behind me. I said, "That's Uncle Frank hitting golf balls." And about that time, another one landed right there beside it. He hit about 3 or 4 balls right there within a small little group. And here he comes with that prosthetic device walking down the road, and the golf club was swinging from his arm. And so he gets down there, and I said, "Uncle Frank, you almost hit me with these golf balls." He said, "Look at Babe, if I didn't want to hit you, I would have." And so, but he gets back up there, and then he gets and hits it back to his house. And I said, "Don't hit it in the road, you might crack a windshield." He said, "You ain't got to worry about that, Babe. I ain't going to hit it in the road." So anyway, he was very confident. And one thing about Uncle Frank was he had confidence. And he was always positive. He was a very positive person. There was nothing he couldn't do. So you could get that positive vibe from Uncle Frank. One other stories about golf was, and there's many, but one of my favorite stories is we were playing at Stone Creek, and Walter Wingate, a friend of mine, was playing with us. And Walter was the opposite of that, of negative. And so he had bought him one of these brand new Zebra putters. This was a big thing back in the early 90s. And Walter couldn't make a putt with that new putter. And he's going around, he's fussing about that thing the whole time. And Uncle Frank told him several times, he said, "Look at Babe, it ain't the putter." And Walter, "No, Uncle Frank," he said, "it's this putter." So we get around the 16th hole, and those that play golf in here, it's a very severe green that breaks big. And Walter's on the front of the green and putts, and it breaks about 10 feet, and he's still 10 or 12 feet away from the hole. And he says, "This putter ain't no good." And Uncle Frank said, "Look at Babe, hand me that putter." And he took the putter from Walter, and of course he licked it so he could get it on his prosthetic device, threw a ball on the ground, put it, and knocked it in the hole. He said, took it off, and he said, "That ain't the putter." And so, and he was good at golf. There's no question about it. And for some reason, I don't really know, he really loved my children. And unfortunately for Zach and Casey, he loved Courtney. He would tell you, "Courtney's my favorite." And Casey would come up to him, "Well, Uncle Frank, what about me?" He said, "No, I love you, but Courtney's my favorite." So one of the things he did, I remember him doing this one time, but he said he taught her how to play basketball. And Courtney, and he'd come down there to the house. So Courtney wanted to be a good basketball player, so she would shoot 100 shots or make 100 shots a day. And so Uncle Frank said he'd come down there one time and, come down there every day, and I helped her shoot every day. And I asked Charlotte about that. He said, "Well, I think he'd come one time." But he will tell you this day, he made her the basketball player she is. So, yeah, he would stretch some of that. But anyway, we remember Uncle Frank fondly. Really enjoyed the times we had with him, whether it was on a golf course or doing whatever, playing football over there at Pine Grove. And he said he'd never let me catch a pass and all this sort of stuff. And he did many times, but he was a really good athlete, and Uncle Frank will be missed for sure.
You got to say it. Look here, babe. I'll be brief. Uncle Frank was very, very special to me. Most of you know that my mom was pregnant with me when he lost his arm. And Mom, I didn't realize this until just a few minutes ago. He was 22, and he was a young man. And I guess I only knew him with his arm gone. But the thing that so many have said is so true. It never, ever bothered him. Or if it did, he darn sure hit it very, very well. So everybody says I'm kind of like Uncle Frank. That's an honor. That's an honor. They showed me a picture of him the other day. I thought it was me. But I'll tell you one quick story that I shared with Aunt Kat the other night. The other one is about Mom throwing the ball with him. I can see you out there now throwing that ball with him, teaching him letting him learn how to throw left-handed. He was indomitable. His spirit was indomitable. You could not get him down. So the only story that I'll share is the other night Aunt Kat told me about the WVLD radio tower. For those of you who don't know, there's a big tall tower out there on 84. And according to Aunt Cat, and I believe this, guarantee it happened. A light bulb went out at the very top of the tower. And they needed a light to be on because that's where airplanes had to avoid the tower. And somebody said, we'll pay you $100 to climb the tower and put the light bulb in. Guess what? One arm. One arm. The man climbed that radio tower and installed a light bulb. I don't know what else I could say about Uncle Frank that could define him better than that. And he was a loving man. He was a kind man. And he always said, I love you. He always said, I love you. And I'll never forget that. And sometimes I didn't say it back to him when I should have. But he was a special, special man. And my goal when I get there is to go play golf with him for all of eternity. He will be missed.
I know your life on earth was troubled, and only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You were no stranger to rain. So go rest high on that mountain. The sun, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven and shout love for the Father and the Son. Oh, how we cried the day you left us. We gathered round your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. So go rest high on that mountain. The sun, your work on earth is done. Go to heaven
One little note that I forgot. I'm going to let you go. I'll never forget Frank telling me he was practicing baseball one day. He was a pitcher, baseball pitcher. And he was always going on at his daddy about baseball. He said, son, he said, I can hit anything you got. So one day, Frank was practicing with the team, and his daddy showed up, cold turkey. And he may have told some of y'all this, I don't know, but Mr. Culpepper picked up the bat, and Frank says, I'll show you. 5 straight pitches, Mr. Culpepper hit 5 straight line drives, laid the bat down, and left the field. Anyway, let's close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we are just so thrilled that you're with us. You tell us that you'll never leave us or forsake us. And I know you've been with us. That's what makes things so easier for families in difficult times like this. Again, Father, 2 great families, Culpeppers, Parkers, big families, loving families that love each other. Thank you, God, for passing that on and helping. Father, we just overjoyed that Frank is in your arms today. He was a worthy servant in your kingdom. And those words are so comforting. Enter into my kingdom, thy good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of my kingdom, thy good and faithful servant. That is so comforting to know and to hear. Father, thank you again for this service. Thank you for everybody that was involved. And we just won't ever forget Oscar Frank Culpepper, son, as he was called by his dad. As I ask this prayer in your son's name and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. This service is dismissed now.